Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool Transfer Talk show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. So many rumors circling in the last 48 hours, so it's only right that we cover them in our weekly Liverpool Transfer Talk show tonight. So let's start with the big one, and that is Kevin De Bruyne possibly joining the Reds next season, according to rumors. Now, the news broke yesterday in terms of rumors suggesting that Liverpool have been in touch with Kevin De Bruyne's agents and representatives in regards to possibly joining the Reds next season. Now, definitely raised a few eyebrows in terms of the profile of the player. Of course, Kevin De Bruyne is a world-class midfielder, but let's weigh the pros and cons. In terms of the pros, of course, we get a serial winner in our squad, a player that can play in that number 10 role very, very comfortably and effectively, which is more important. He brings a winning mentality, he brings experience to our young squad. Um, he's a player that, might not have the legs as he did a few years ago, but can still be effective in games. And I don't think he'll expect to play every single game. I think, with squad rotation and, time management, we can make sure he is effective whenever called upon. And I feel like he could have a huge impact in our team. Even if he, was a player that came off the bench for 20 minutes or started certain games for like an hour, I feel like he can be very, very impactful in terms of how we play. Because there's been games where we've been struggling to open up low blocks, and he's a player that can definitely do that. He's a master of that sort of trait, and also with Trent Alexander-Arnold departing the club, he could add that creative spark that we need from a different position. So, that's all the pros. The cons, of course, will be his age, where he is 33 right now, but will be turning 34 in June, so literally a month away. So if we were to sign him, he's signed as a 34-year-old. I believe that the contract will be for a year with a possible another year added, according to rumors. So in terms of the contract left, that's not a big issue. The big issue would be his salary, where I think right now he's earning probably around 400k, 450k. Is he willing to take a pay cut? You can't completely rule it out, because one of the things that he said was that he wants to remain in the Premier League. So it might be a thing where, if he wants to play at the highest level but has to take a pay cut, it could be something that's on the cards. Whether it's realistic or not, very difficult to say at the minute. And I think the big con for me is his injury records in recent years. We're not getting a prime Kevin De Bruyne. We're not getting that version of him. Unfortunately, we're getting a Kevin De Bruyne that unfortunately has suffered some big injuries in the last couple of years, and that has actually impacted in the way he plays. He's lost that burst of speed. He's known to be a very dynamic midfielder. He doesn't really have that energy about him anymore. Of course, on the ball, you don't really lose that ability, but for our sort of way of playing, you still need to be an energetic. Like, look at Szoboszlai, for example. He's the one that leads the press whenever we play. So that would be an issue, and I don't want it to be a repeat of Thiago Alcantara. Now, Thiago Alcantara is one of my favorite midfielders of all time, and when he came to Liverpool, I was so excited. But unfortunately, injuries, affected his time and impact at the club. I don't want it to be where, Kevin De Bruyne is in the same ilk where he joins and, we're all jubilant about signing a world-class player. And unfortunately, he picks up a few injuries here and there, and then, we don't really get to see the best of him in that sort of period. So that would be my concerns in terms of signing Kevin De Bruyne. Um, but there's pros and cons in everything, right? So if there is any truth to it, look, if we are serious and we want to sign him for a year or two, I wouldn't be completely against it. Um, I'm sick and tired of being an accountant now, so I don't want it to be based on financial reasons. But if the club and Kevin De Bruyne come to terms and he's willing to join Liverpool, then let's go. Why not? We would sign a quality player, and I think it might not be the prime Kevin De Bruyne, but I think it would definitely add a slight fear factor to our rivals because they're like, oh shoot, they've got Kevin De Bruyne, and he might not be at his best, but his average is better than most players in world football right now. I think that would be a very sort of smart sign. Of course, it would be a bit of a slap in the face to his current team, which is Man City. So we've been head to head regards to title races. So for him to join us, and if he was to win a title or two with us, then it'll definitely hurt them in that way. So in that sort of manner, I'm all for it. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Kevin De Bruyne because I think he has voiced that he would like to stay in the Premier League. I think a few weeks ago he was linked with a move to Aston Villa, which is actually a good club. I think it would be a good move if he was to, consider that offer. But he's also got interest from Napoli. So it depends in terms of what his stance is. Does he want to remain in England? Because I think that's one of the reasons that he wants to stay in the Premier League. I think his family settled. I know Van Dijk and Kevin De Bruyne are good friends on the outside because their kids go to the same school. So they actually, they formed a friendship and they actually bump into each other quite a bit. So the positive thing for Kevin De Bruyne would be the fact that he doesn't need to relocate. He can still live where he's currently living right now and just drive over to the Access Training Center. It's not too far from where he lives. So, you know, doesn't need to relocate. He plays for the current champions. So it's a win-win in that situation. And can you imagine a team involving Kevin De Bruyne, Mohamed Salah, and then you got Van Dijk in the mix as well. And if you were to sign a top striker, add that on top, that's something that we'll be all smiling a lot this summer. So who knows? It remains to be seen. I know the Napoli offer, from what I've heard today, is quite a big one where they are trying their best to get him on board. So that could be an option for him where he goes over to a competitive league in Serie A and continues his career there, which would be a good move for him as well. So one to watch. Let's see what happens. I don't think it's quite clear cut as what some reports are suggesting, but only time will tell. We'll see where Kevin De Bruyne ends up next season. Another player that's been getting a lot of reviews or a lot of mentions right now is Jeremie Frimpong. Now, I've mentioned him pretty much every transfer show that I've been doing in recent weeks. And if you watched it before, you know that I'm a strong advocate of the player. I think he's a very, very talented player. The only question mark would be if we are to sign him, where does he fit? Because for me, he's not a traditional right back. I know he has played there for Man City and Celtic in terms of previous clubs, but even at Celtic, I was watching a compilation of him uh, whilst he was a Celtic player. He seemed to be quite advanced. He used to play pretty much as a winger. So I don't think it's where he's a traditional right back in that sense. And of course, no offense to the teams in the Scottish League, but Celtic were dominant in that league and are currently still dominant in that league. So the way they play is completely different. They will play with more aggressive and adventurous players to try and exploit the opposition. So for me, it's going to be interesting. I think if he was to be signed, he could be an option for right back. I can also provide cover for Mohamed Salah, which I've been saying for about a year now, that we need someone to cover for Salah. And Frimpong for me would have been the ideal player. I mentioned this 12 months ago. So if you don't believe me, go through the channel. I think I've even published a short video on YouTube mentioning this as well. I think he'd be the perfect player for that right hand side because I watched him play for Netherlands on the right wing, and he's unstoppable. So if we were to switch up formations, we play with wing back, that would suit him to the T because I think naturally he is more of a wing back um, than a traditional right back. So look, I think the benefit of signing a player like Jeremie Frimpong, he gives you different options. He can play at right back. He doesn't need to play at right back week in, week out, but he gives you that opportunity to really exploit teams, especially teams that play on a low block, and there's a lot of them in the Premier League. Let's be quite honest there. So playing a player like Frimpong would give the opposition a headache in terms of occupying more players on that side, and that will actually create space in the central areas for us. So an area that the number 10 or the number 9 could definitely exploit, or even Mohamed Salah, who I expected to drift more infield if we were to sign a player like Frimpong. So it gives you a different tactical variation in terms of how we set up, and he gives us a few options in terms of playing left wing, sorry, right wing back, right back. He can even play on the left wing if we had to switch him over there. So he's got a release clause. £35 million is what I believe the fee is. That's a no-brainer in this day and age. And there's a lot of sort of case gathering regarding this rumor as he's been recognized as the guy that we're going to go ahead and sign. I will still have question marks with regards to him playing as a traditional right back, but if Arne Slot and the data team believe all the metrics are in line and that he could do a job for us there, I'm all for it. As a player, I really rate him. I think he's a top player, and for 35 million, yeah, it would be a great deal. So let's see how it goes. I do think he's the one that we could potentially see. If we were to sign a right back as well, then it gives us more options for that right hand side. But only time will tell. But definitely one to watch. I think we're going to hear more rumors and stories circulating around Jeremy Frimpong. So that's one to watch out for. Another player I've been recently linked with again is Morgan Rogers. Now, rumors are suggesting that Villa need to sell a player if they fail to qualify for the Champions League, and as they are also would need to raise funds in order to meet PSR. So, my thoughts on that. I think there might be some truth to raising funds if they aren't able to qualify for the Champions League. Um, But would Morgan Rogers be the guy that departs? I don't think he would. I think he's probably one of the highly prized assets right now because a young player, he's on the up right now. If they were to sell a player, maybe they'd go for an Ollie Watkins. And I know he's, a great striker for them. He's prolific, but he was close to leaving in the January window and joining Arsenal. So maybe that's a player that leads. And depends on how the finances are. How much do they need to generate? If it's a large amount, then it would probably be a player like Rodgers. But they do have other players that, if they wanted to part ways, then they can be placed in the market to be sold. So for me, I do like the player. I still think he's a bit raw in certain elements. I think his end product needs to improve, but I think that will come with more game time and with more experience as well. I don't think it's realistic, if I'm being brutally honest. I can see this, you know, rumor sort of suggesting that his fee would be quite high, maybe around 60, 70 million pounds. And for a player that's not really going to be a starter, in my opinion, I think that's a huge amount to pay for someone. So got to be smart with our money. We've got to use it wisely elsewhere. So I don't think Morgan Rogers will be the one that we end up going for. Darwin Núñez. So let's talk about internal players now. So he's being linked with a move to Atletico as well as Napoli. Now, Atletico one's a bit interesting because I say Atletico, I think they're both interesting. I'll explain why. Because with the Atletico deal, uh, they seem to value him at a very low rate. They're valuing him at £35 million, which for me is, yeah, I would not accept that deal. I know I've voiced to say that I'd accept whatever amount for Darwin is, but 35 seems very low for me. So the reason why I said it was interesting because we're interested in one of their players, who is Julian Alvarez. Now, of course, he joined Atletico Madrid last year for around £64 million. plus add-ons. So the add-ons, I think, would result to the whole transfer package being around £85 million. Actually, quite similar to the Darwin Nunes deal where we signed him. We signed him for, Ryan fans will tell you £85 million, but we might have paid for it now because he's won the league title and all that sort of stuff. But originally it was 64 plus add-ons that resulted to it being around 85 million pounds. So um that wouldn't be an offer I accept if it is £35 million. And someone's suggesting that if we accept that offer, that would be a sweetener to get the deal done for Alvarez. I don't buy that, to be honest with you. I think Alvarez has a release clause of around 120 so £1 million. And so if we're really interested, we'll probably have to, activate the release clause. Because I don't think Atletico would want to negotiate, and they probably want around that figure anyway. So it's going to be very interesting to know what happens with regards to Alvarez and Darwin Nunes. But he's also got interest from Napoli, who are on the search of finding a replacement for Osimhen, who doesn't have a long-term future at the club. He's currently on loan at Galatasaray. So the question is, could we do a swap deal here? Maybe we get Osimhen in return, and then they get Darwin Nunes, because I know Osimhen has a £60 million release clause. We value Darwin Nunes around that kind of fee as well. If you guys remember, in January we rejected a £70 million bid from Saudi, so he's we could easily attain around that sort of 50 to £70 million if we can, if possible. So um, so two clubs that are, you know known to be very good European teams, and I feel like it's two leagues that he will definitely do really well. And I think in La Liga he's already played there before for Almeria, so he's already, you know, played football there. So I think he'll do really well in La Liga. And I think for Serie A, I think his skill set really will suit the way he plays. And I think playing for a team like Napoli, with a passionate fan base, that'll suit his character as well. So it's a good two options to have for Darwin Núñez. Atletico, another team, with a passionate, aggressive manager, Diego Simeone, wanting him, and then Antonio Conte wanting him at Napoli as well. So two good offers there. Uh, but it's not all about Darwin Núñez. It's about Liverpool Football Club as well. We need to try and get the best possible financial deal. So whoever meets our valuation will sign the player. So remains to be seen. I don't think this deal, if it was Atletico, will help the Alvarez deal. I don't think it will help the Osimhen deal either. But you never know. Stranger things have happened in the world of football. And speaking of Alvarez, a lot of noise this week regarding us trying to sign Julian Alvarez. Now, on paper, I think he might be the perfect striker for us. I've probably been more of an advocate for Alexander Isak, who I think is a sublime striker, and I think he would fit us to the T. But so would Julian Alvarez, maybe even more so, because Julian Alvarez has, of different areas of his game that would excel in the Arne Slot team. He can play on the wings, he can play as a number 10. He's very good on the ball, great link up play, but he's a serial finisher as well. So he's a 9.5. That's kind of the perfect striker for Arne Slot, because we're not quite sure if he wants a traditional number 9 or if he wants to continue that false 9 player. But if you go playing Alvarez, you can do a bit of both. So is that 9.5? Then he has to be earmarked as the perfect striker. But like I mentioned earlier on, he signed last year. So I very much doubt that he'd want to leave so soon. And one of the rumors that I heard, that his wife wasn't happy about living in England. So that's one of the reasons why they wanted to move elsewhere and play, or should I say, relocate to a different location. And they've moved over to Spain, which pretty much suits players from South America. Similar culture, similar lifestyle, and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know if he's ready to give that up to join Liverpool, but we'll see. Only time will tell. I would love for us to sign a player of his ilk, but yeah, it seems very, very unlikely. It would cost us a lot. Whether Liverpool are ready to stump up the cash, remains to be seen. Another player that is definitely developing some strong links right now is Angelo Stiller. Now, um, according to reports, this is regarded as one of our prime targets to sign this window. He's a ball playing defensive midfielder, so not quite a destroyer, but a player that can set the tempo, has a good passing range, but is, good and efficient on the ball and is a strong tackler as well. So an all-rounder and a player that I think would probably suit Arne Slot's style of play, especially if you consider the fact that we were trying to sign Zubimendi, who's probably like stylistically that type of player as well. Um, the only thing is that he'd cost us quite a bit. I think last time we were showing interest in him, um, I'm not sure why we didn't go ahead because I believe he had a quite a low release clause around 20 odd million pounds. He signed a new contract in January, so his release clause I don't think is active until next year in 2026. So if we were to trying to acquire his services, we'd have to place a decent bid. So maybe around that 50 million mark would be enough to prize him away. Which seems a bit high for a player who I don't think would walk into the team. I think he'd be on paper that a player on that would be on the bench, challenging for a role in the team with the likes of McAllister and Gravenberch. Um, and also from the compilation I've seen him, I've not seen him play live, so that's something I plan on doing very soon because I want to see, how he performs in a full 90 minutes and get better understanding of why we're so heavily linked with the player. So for me, he's not my first choice. He's a good player, but he's not a needle mover in my opinion. So I could be wrong because I've seen other content creators speak, very highly of the player. So maybe I've missed something here. I'm not too sure, but I'm definitely going to try and check him out in the next few weeks and give you my verdict. As I'm sure we're going to hear more reports surrounding Stiller this summer. So we'll have to sit tight and see what happens with this one. Another centre back linked with Liverpool, and that is Murillo. Now, of course, the Brazilian centre back is having a fantastic season at Forest. So much so that he's actually linked with a move to Real Madrid in the January window. For me, I'm not so sure if he's a realistic target, as I don't think Forest will want to part ways. And, if they were to change their mind or if they were to be tempted to part ways with the player, it would be because someone is offering them big, big money. And I'm talking in the region of like 60 to 80 million pounds. And for me, that's a lot of money for a player that I don't think would be first choice, despite his talent. I think Konate and Van Dijk will be our starters next season. So it would be quite a bit of money to spend on a player who would be third choice, in my opinion. I do like him. I really rate him. Very strong, great left foot on him, very aggressive, and he chips in the goals when it comes to set pieces. So for me, would be a good addition to our squad. I just don't think it's a realistic deal, if I'm being brutally honest. Now, another player that we've been linked with previously, but the rumors keep building for this player, and that is Benjamin Sesko. Now, the rumors have been circulating even more this week because he scored a spectacular goal last weekend against Bayern Munich. It wasn't that great, and I'm not trying to, belittle the guy or anything like that. He scored an open goal, but his technique was that he hit it with the outside of his boot. Some players might have controlled it, measured it, and then tried to loop it over the keeper. He went for a first time finish with the outside of the boot, so it looked spectacular from the outside. But my stance hasn't changed in regards to Sesko. I don't think he's a striker that we should be going for. For me, he's far too raw, and I want us to sign a player that's ready made. I don't really want us to sign a project player. Darwin Nunes was that guy, and that project has failed, in my opinion. Um, and I also don't think he's good enough to be a success in the Premier League. Like he has good traits, but I don't think he's going to be a dominant striker in the Premier League. So I could be brutally wrong because I know he's been linked to a move to Arsenal as well. So he could join them this summer. But for Liverpool, for me, he's not the profile that I want. So unfortunately, it's a no for me with regards to Benjamin Sesko. Another player internally that we can speak about is Harvey Elliott. Now he's being currently linked with a move to Wolves. Um, Liverpool have valued Harvey Elliott at £40 million, which sounds about right to be fair. The only issue is that Harvey Elliott is a Liverpool fan, just like us, so he wouldn't want to leave his boyhood club um, on his own accord. He's not Trent. Trent's a bit of a traitor. Like he's gone on for personal glory. Elliot, he's voiced, his passion and love for the team. So he's like us, he's a fan. So he wouldn't want to leave Liverpool anytime soon, unless, unfortunately, he's forced out. Where, if that is the case, then he will have to seek a move away from the club. Now, let's say that was to be true, that he's been told that he needs to find a new club. No disrespect to Wolves, but I think he's too good for them, and he should be aiming or playing for a team at a high level, a team that should be playing in European football. So I think that's the kind of caliber of a team that he should be joining. Maybe someone like an Aston Villa, like that type of team, I feel like would suit him a lot better in comparison to Wolves. But if Wolves want to pay £40 million, which is our valuation, then I'm all for it. Although I personally wouldn't want to see him leave. I still feel like he can have an impact in our team, but it also depends on the plans of our recruitment. If we were to sell Harvey Elliott, will we sign a replacement? So, i.e., if we were to get a Ryan Cherky, then yeah, I'm on board because we sell 40 Harvey Elliott for 40 million and get Cherky for 2025. We've made profit and we've got a player that's ready made, in my opinion, to make an impact straight away. So that would be the only reason why I'd want us to sell Harvey Elliott. Otherwise, I think he's good enough to be a squad player for us. But we'll see what happens this summer. And speaking of Wolves, interesting links surrounding their left back, and that is Nouri. Now, I really like the player. I think he's very talented, very uh, technically gifted. He attacks that left hand side very well. He can make runs in the overlap and also underlap, causing chaos when he's in a more central position. And he's found himself in goal scoring uh, positions this season as well. Now, for some reason, if the Kirkis deal, which seems to be the one that looks like it's a shoe-in for Liverpool, seems to fall through for whatever reason, Nuri could be an alternative option. He'd be a cheap option. If you're thinking financially, probably cost us around 25-30 million pounds. But I would have concerns about signing Nuri in terms of his defending. I think he's more of a wing back rather than a left back, and I've seen him in games where he's out of position quite a lot of times, and that's why Wolves do get attacked a lot on the opposition's right hand side because they're able to exploit um, Nouri's overlapping runs and all that sort of stuff. So um, if you were to switch to a back three, he'd be the perfect wing back, but I'm not so sure if Kirkes wasn't able to join Liverpool for whatever reason, I'd go for Hato. I think that would be the signing that makes the most sense. And if we were to sign Frimpong, then I think he would add balance to our backline. Got one defensive fullback and then one attacking fullback. That's the perfect mix there. If we were to have Kirkes and Frimpong, for example, then we need to sign a real number six. So it's going to be a very interesting summer. It'll, you know, Once we sign certain players, maybe that will help us assess the squad a bit better, and then we know where we stand in terms of who the acquisitions could be. So I'm excited. But in terms of Aknuri, good option, but I think looks like we're going to go ahead with Kirkis, in my opinion. And the next player, Xavi Simons. Now, another week and another story surrounding the Dutchman there. This week it's reported that Arne Slot is very interested in the player and would like to make him one of his first signings this summer. As I mentioned before, I do think Sammy Simons is a good player, but I think there's better options elsewhere as he's not going to be a starter, um, and he will be heavily rotated across the midfield. So a player that's going to cost around £60 million to be a squad player, for me, slightly high. But if we were to sign him, I wouldn't be, hugely concerned. But it would also depend on who else we sign because then it paints a picture in terms of where everyone stands in the squad. So, if we were to sign Savage Simmons, but we don't get a Cherky, for example, because we've decided to go with Simmons instead of Cherky, then for me that would raise some question marks. But good player. I just don't think he's the right player for us at the minute. But if Chiesa and other players were to depart, maybe he comes in to replace those players. So we'll see. Another player that looks like he could be leaving is Brian Mbeumo. Now, his teammate and Brentford captain Christian Norgard said in an interview very recently that he believes Mbeumo is very likely to leave this summer, which poses the question: which side will try to sign the attacker? Now, he's had a lot of interest from clubs like Newcastle over the years, but if Liverpool was smart, they would make a bid for this player. This season, his stats are very, very good. 39 appearances in all comps, 18 goals, 8 assists, which is 26 GAs in 39 games. Now, I think personally he would be a fantastic signing, great cover for Mohamed Salah. We'll be able to rotate the two players a lot more. And the bonus thing is with Mbromo is that he can play as a striker as well. So he gives us another option in a different position. But there's two factors that could affect the deal. Number one is the price. I think Brentford want around £60 million, which I think is a bit steep. £40 million seems about right in terms of his valuation. And another factor could be AFCON. Now, as he represents Cameroon, when AFCON happens, I think it's going to happen January next year. Uh, Mbeumo and Salah would be unavailable for the team, which would weaken our team uh, with having two missing attackers on international duty. So that could be a factor, unfortunately. But look, watch this space. As I've said before about Mbeumo, I think he's very similar to Mohamed Salah in terms of how he plays and how he scores. Mbeumo is not your typical right winger where he takes on the fullbacks. He can do it. He's got great uh, ability on the ball and he's got great skill and great speed on that byline, but he's more of an inside forward, like a Mohamed Salah. I feel like he's driven to score goals. He finds himself in great positions to be a goal scorer. Um, so I think he might not be the glorious name out there, but I think he would be a very smart signing, and I could see him being a long-term replacement for Salah. And Bomo, I believe, is 24, 25, so he's at a good age as well. Might not be the big name that we're expecting, but you know, if you see how our business is conducted in the Premier League, you will know that it's not always about signing big name players, it's about signing the right players for the right system. And I think Mbeumo would fit our system very, very perfectly. Next player, Nico Williams. Now his name has been mentioned again in the rumor mill. You already know my views in terms of the player. I think he's very talented. He's got a release clause of around £43 million, but his salary would break the bank. So another thing as well, I don't mean to be rude when I say this out loud. I don't think he's any better than Diaz or Gakpo. So for me, why sign him if he's not going to upgrade our current positions in the team? He's not needed. He's not a priority signing. So for me, I don't think it's a signing that the club will pursue unless a player departs like a Luis Diaz and we need to find a replacement. That will be another conversation for another day. But for me, I don't think this is a realistic option for Liverpool. Next player, very interesting player who has been linked with the club, and that is Monaco's Van der Sen. Now, I've covered Van der Sen in the Defenders episode of Liverpool Squad Talk. So if you've missed it, please make sure to catch up on it. As I've discussed a lot of potential right back targets for us in the summer, so it's an interesting one to watch. Now, in terms of Van der Sen, he was one of the players that really stood out for me. And I watched a few compilations of him. Defensively, very good, but also very good offensively as well. So he's got a definite good balance in terms of how he plays, and I think he'll add that to our team on that right hand side in comparison to some targets who are a bit more attack-minded than the norm. His stats this season, 39 appearances in all comps, 2 goals and 5 assists. He's only 23 years of age, and apparently the club have said that he's allowed to leave if they receive the right offer. Now, no sort of prices have been quoted. I'm not sure what his valuation would be, but I think around that £30 million mark should be enough to prize him away to Anfield. So this is one to watch, as the rumours have been, building up regards to his name to Liverpool. But if I was to make a prediction, I think we will go ahead and sign Frimpong this summer. But let's see what happens. And the final rumor of today, and that is Morten Friendrup. Now, the Danish midfielder currently plies his trade in Genoa, is making a lot of noise as a number of Premier League clubs are seeking his signature for this summer. The ball winning and tough tackling midfielder is a very interesting profile and could be the type of player that Liverpool need to recruit this summer. We've been shouting for number 6 for a number of years now. Maybe this could be the guy. Now, I watched a few clips of him today, and for me, he looks very interesting. He's very good at intercepting. He can sniff out the ball. So he's one of those aggressive, tenacious type players. But in terms of his ability on the ball, he can play as well. So he's not one-dimensional. He's just not a complete destroyer. He can play a bit as well. So in terms of what he brings to the table, he could be a hidden gem. The last time I watched a Danish player, or should I say, a Danish midfielder in Serie A, was a couple of years ago. The guy was playing for Leeds and ended up making the move to Sporting. And since then, he's made a name for himself. So if you're familiar with the player I'm talking about, his name is Martin Højlund. And even at the time, I said that Liverpool needed to sign this player as he fit the criteria into what we were looking for in a number 6. And most importantly, he wasn't going to cost us a lot. So FSG were able to, keep some of their millions and save it for another day, because he would have cost us around 10 odd million pounds at the time. Now, of course, his valuation is a lot higher. So if Liverpool are serious about Morten Friendrup and really rate the player, let's hope, they actually do make the move this summer and not lose out on a player who will probably be worth a lot more if he ends up moving to another club this summer. So let's hope we've learned from our previous errors from previous years. And that is the end of the show, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming shows, I will be doing a live watch along of Liverpool versus Arsenal this Sunday, and we'll also be doing a match reaction show later in the evening. In terms of the Transfer Talk show, we'll probably do another one probably around the same time next week. So if there's any rumors that you feel like I've missed, feel free to drop a comment after the video. And yeah, I can discuss them in more detail next time. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.